Friends and colleagues, so the president's son is facing charges in a sordid affair involving narcotics traffickers and political connections. You would be forgived if you thought I was talking about Joe Biden's son Hunter, but no, I'm talking about the son of none other than Colombia's president Gustavo Petro. His son Nicolás Petro has been arrested. He was arrested by the uh, Attorney General's office over national police over the weekend in an early morning raid. Both he and his ex-wife De Sures Vásquez were both arrested in Barranquilla, put on a plane and taken to the famous bunker in Bogotá, in the capital. And Petro has come out and said that he wishes his son luck and strength in this investigation. The investigation, a lot of people will come out and say, oh, it's political, and I'm sure that there are political aspects of it. But you have to remember that Petro himself called for this investigation. So a few months ago, I think it was about February or March, De Sures Vásquez, who is the scorned ex-wife of Nicolás Petro, accused the president's son of taking quite a bit of millions of pesos in about $124,000, which is about, I think about 60 million pesos or something like that. But anyway, they accused her ex-husband of taking this money from the drug lord Samuel Santander Lopeciero, who is also, people, bad guys down here and politicians too, like to go by colorful nicknames. And so Mr. Lopeciero has the nickname or nom de guerre of the Marlboro Man. So the accusations are such that Nicolás Petro has taken over $100,000 during the campaign, during President Gustavo Petro, his father's campaign, from this drug lord to be used in the campaign because Lopeciero wanted to get involved in politics himself and hoped to get the blessings and acquiescence of Gustavo Petro, who has run on a peace and reform and anti-corruption platform. Now, the accusation is not that this money went into Petro's campaign. It gets worse. The accusation is that Nicolás Petro took the money and kind of under the implication that he would broker influence, kind of again with the echoes of what's happening up in the United States with Joe Biden and his, let's say, wayward son, Hunter. But anyway, apparently, or at least according to Dave Vásquez, he took the money for the campaign, but didn't use it for the campaign. He just kept it for himself and spent it on, houses and luxury things or whatever. So you have kind of a case of double corruption. So one, you're taking money from a narcotics drug lord for a political campaign, which is bad enough. And two, you don't even give it to the campaign, but you keep it and spend it. So here we have a guy with lots of foresight and obviously his frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, the home of executive function, seems to be humming along. So anyway, he's in hot water now. He's in the Hoosegow, as we would say. Hoosegow is an interesting word. It's from American slang, and it comes from the Old West, where the English cowboy slang Hoosegow, he's in the Hoosegow, as they might say, actually comes from the Spanish word Juzgado. Juzgado, of course, in the Wild West, there was at one time much of it was part of Mexico, and so to this day we have a tremendous Latino and Spanish influence. So he's in the Hoosegow along with his ex-wife. She was arrested too, so there are no happy campers in this case. She went on. So what happened is Nicolás Petro, when he was married to Dave Vásquez, cheated on her with her best friend, who's an actor, and the actor is now knocked up. I think they have a baby coming. He lives with the actor now. So he left within less than 1 year of marriage. Nicolás Petro leaves his wife for her best friend, gets her knocked up. Dave Vásquez has gone on to an aspirant to be the governor of Santander. Was it Santander? I think it's Atlántico. But anyway, she's kind of gotten her way into politics and kind of is running with that crowd now. I forget if her boyfriend or fiance, he's a gubernatorial candidate for either. Forgive me for forgetting. I don't have my notes in front of me. Santander, or I think actually maybe Atlántico, there in Barranquilla, where they all seem to be kind of based these days. So then over the weekend, it looks like the prosecutor did not have just Javier Barbosa's office didn't have their act together. So in Colombia, when you arrest somebody like that, you have to bring them in and arraign them, would be the equivalent right away. And to do that, there are certain requirements. The lawyers have to be there and things like that. So it looks like even though they're putting on this show, the charges may be serious and the charges may be well-founded. After all, Day came out there and said this. Petro himself asked for this investigation that has led to his son's arrest. So, but there is a controversy because being public figures, all of them, you could argue that they did not have to be arrested and walked into the prosecutor's chambers because you could say that people like this could simply be charged in order to appear, kind of like a recognizance bond. It's like, we know who you are. You're not going to escape anywhere. You're facing these charges. There's no need to make a big show about the arrest. And the criticism is that that whole show of the arrest was politically motivated. It may be. However, the charges are very serious and the charges seem to have some foundation to them. At least there's a credible, there's somebody credible making the charges. So this is an interesting case. Stay tuned to Finance Colombia. Let's see what's going to happen with this. But that is kind of the news of the day. Moving on to some different things. In Medellín, we're at the last, I'm recording this on the 31st of July, and the Feria de las Flores, which is a famous Medellín flower kind of festival and parade. Antioquia is a big exporter of cut flowers to the rest of the world, one of the top exporters in the world, along with a couple of other places like I think Kenya and a couple other countries. And the Feria de las Flores, the flower festival, is always a big deal with a parade, with concerts and things like that. But we seem to be on kind of the worst Feria de las Flores ever under the administration and organization of Medellín's Mayor Daniel Quintero, who kind of paints himself as the savior of all things good and beautiful. But they had the initial concert that normally takes place. It was going to bring people here like Ivy Queen, if you wanted to say it in English. Ivy Queen is I'm a big admirer of her. She has been a reggaeton artist since the beginning of reggaeton. Before it was even called reggaeton, old timers will remember it used to be called dembow music. But she's from Puerto Rico. She's got to be about 60 by now, but she's always been a tremendous performer going back to the 1990s. She was supposed to come. Farruko was supposed to be here. The concert collapsed. Normally, the Fábrica Licorera de Industria Licorera de Antioquia, which is the maker of Ron Medellín, what normally is a sponsor. They're nowhere to be found this year. That's probably due to the bad relations between Quintero and the governor of Antioquia, who controls the liquor factory, which would be Anibal Gaviria. The festival has, normally there are big palcos, they're big, you would call them bleachers. I'm forgetting English. So there would be big palcos, which are bleachers that normally should be lining the streets for the festival. There are no bleachers to be found. The concert's canceled. They have 30% less budget than before. They had kind of a concert, but they had some people, no disrespect, because I'm sure that they're good artists, but you have superstars, then you have stars, then you have up-and-comers, then you have people that are great musicians, but but maybe are not as well known, who I guess put on a concert. Like I guess they went out and found some local talent real quick. The Secretary of Culture, Alvaro Narvaez, who's a Quintero um, appointee, blamed the the sorry state of the Feria de Flores on the money that Quintero wanted to get, some kind of like 330 billion pesos that he wanted to get from EPM as this one-time thing to go and then spend on all this largesse. However, no, because that one-time fund, the city of Medellín is bringing in more money than ever. Okay, so he's got a bigger budget than ever, but whatever has happened to his management, he can't get his hands on this EPM money. He wanted to sell the city's shares in the EPM Tigo joint venture that provides telecommunication services. I'm using it for fiber optic connectivity right here. But the city council, I think in this good judgment, blocked him from getting his hand on these windfalls. And so without these windfalls, the city still has a bigger budget than ever. But where has the money gone? Okay, hopefully, and I'm sure that the Procuraduría, which is like Colombia, has a special prosecution. There's like the Attorney General, which, and this is different in every country. So these terms don't align 100% in other Spanish-speaking countries. But you have the Fiscalía, which is like the Attorney General's office. So it's like the national prosecutor of everything from, just whatever kind of general crime. Then you have the Procuraduría, which the word also translates to prosecutor. But in Colombia, the Procuraduría is like a special type of anti-crime unit that specializes in public employees and politicians. So we will see over time. The good thing about Colombia is that sometimes it takes a while for politicians to, or for, I guess, let's say things to come out, but they tend to come out and people tend to things tend to catch up with people. But there's a really weird situation. The Secretary of Education in Medellín was removed from her office for suspicion of corruption. But there's a real weird thing right now. Medellín has a bigger budget than ever, but there's no money. So it will be interesting to see in the long term where the money went. I'm sure that it will be investigated. So stay tuned. We're going to keep you up to date in Finance Colombia with that. We also had a couple weeks ago the F-Air, the big, happens every 2 years at the airport, the international airport, Jose Maria Cordova, the international airport outside of Medellín and Rio Negro. It was great this year. It was interesting. We had a lot of participants, Saab, Lockheed Martin, Israel had a defense industry contingent there. Brazil was the invited country of honor, you can say the guest country. And we also had interesting, we did some interviews. There's a couple interviews coming out to talk about Colombia's relationship with Brazil when it comes to aviation trade, aeronautics trade, and military cooperation. So look forward to those. That was a great success. Lots of other different things happening. Salvatore Mancuso, who was a big paramilitary villain, he's actually serving time. He was sent to the United States in 2008, where he's serving a long sentence. But the president, Gustavo Petro, appointed him an emissary of peace. This man who has quite a bit of blood on his hands, who admitted to his organization having buried at least 200 people near the Venezuelan border. Very, very bloody mafia don has been appointed an emissary of peace. So I'm not going to opine on that other than to say that if you want to know why many people are skeptical of the success of this peace initiative, you can look at things like that and say, well, why are you appointing? That's like if I'm going to appoint Pablo Escobar as the spokesman for saying no to drugs or something like that. So anyway, Um, that is a recent development. On a lighter note, we usually don't talk about sports here, not because sports are not important, but because there are a lot of other um, venues that focus on that and do a great job at that. We like sports as much as everybody else, but we try to stay focused. But I will say congratulations to the Colombian women's team that upset Germany 2-1. That was something that not a lot of people expected. So what else? There was a study that came out that said that Colombia has one of the most dangerous highway systems in the world. The Agencia Nacional de Seguridad Vial, which is like the Colombian Highway Safety Agency, said that over 8,000 people died in 2022 on Colombian highways. So Colombian roads in general, I'll say, are pretty well maintained. As a motorist, I can say that the roads is, it depends on where you go, of course. The highways that go between major cities generally are well paved. Some cities have better road conditions than others, but the problem, I think, is in the way that the highways are constructed, and they also have very low capacities. So you have a lot of roads that are only 2 lanes, mountain roads, and these 2-lane roads should be a lot wider. So now what happens is, let's say you're going up a mountain, you get behind a dump truck that's got a full load, it's going really slowly, because it's in low gear trying to make it up this steep mountain grade. And so you're tempted to pass. On the other hand, you've got something coming down the other way. You've got a bus coming down the other way. You've got other people trying to pass. You've got people, of course, on motorcycles everywhere. And so that makes for not a good mix when somebody's going to pass on a motorcycle or going to pass in a car, then a motorcycle's coming down the other way, something like that. And so there are a lot of unnecessary collisions, a lot of unnecessary fatalities. Um, I think that the only countries worse than Colombia when you look at road fatalities, I don't know if they're per mile, I think it's like per highway mile, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Malaysia, and Thailand. I wonder what happens over there in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just kind of throwing this out there. Maybe like everybody has a Ferrari and wants to go 200 miles an hour. That's like the stereotype of the oil sheiks over there, right? I don't know what the case is, but they certainly have plenty of space over there. But in Colombia, I think, and this hurts its industrial capacity too. This is one of the reasons why, for example, if you look at Mexico, Mexico has wide, high capacity, high speed highways. Yeah, I've never seen a highway with a speed limit more than 100 kilometers per hour, which is about 60 miles an hour. I've seen a few with an 80 kilometer per hour speed limit, like up in the northern plains if you're headed towards, let's say, Coveñas or Monteria or something like that. And so they're low speed, low capacity. People don't want to go slow, and there are not opportunities to safely pass. And then you get things like mudslides and other kinds of intrusions on the road. Parts of Colombia would do well to have high-speed highways. If you look at the major cities like Bogotá, it would do well to have things like city bypasses, but there are no bypasses. Some cities do have these, do have bypasses. I was in Barranquilla recently, and they have a modern bypass that's a way to kind of get around the inner city if you're going, like, say, to the airport, which is down in Soledad or something like that. I don't think the political will exists in Colombia to build things like outer belts. If you look at Bogota, if you come in from the north of Bogota and you're not going to Bogota, but you're bypassing the city, there are not very many options. Even if you're leaving to the north of Bogota, going to, let's say, Zipaquirá or something like that, there are no there's only one major road to get out of the city. And if something happens there, forget it. Everything collapses. But the will is not there. I think if you try to build something like that, you would get a lot of opposition, just kind of like that anti-car. Doesn't matter if they're electric or natural gas or whatever. I just think there would be a lot of opposition to building something like that, which is unfortunate because it would save lives and it would also increase Colombia's capacity to produce commercially. So for the record, those countries that are the safest are Iceland, Norway, and Switzerland. So one of the I think the road in Colombia that is the most dangerous long stretch of road would be the highway between Medellín and Bogotá, because it holds a lot of capacity. Parts of it are 4-lane, parts of it have been upgraded, but not all of it. And then there are also things like you get motorcycles and big tanker trucks and dump trucks and all types of vehicles kind of crammed on this road. And you have, it's not a limited access highway. So you've got all this high-speed traffic and high-capacity traffic, and then you'll have a sudden turnoff. So you have people braking and wait, and even out in rural areas. And so not a lot of time goes by between fatal accidents there, which is unfortunate. So I wanted to bring these updates to you. Stay tuned. Forgive my absence for the past couple of weeks. I was traveling. Last week I was at the Oil and Gas Congress in Bogotá. Really interesting. There was a lot of participation from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, headed by Irene Vélez. She has submitted her letter of resignation. I think today is supposed to be her last day. Why did she resign? Because Petro is a big fan of hers, even though she kind of doesn't have a lot of friends within the industry. I think a lot of people in not only the petroleum sector, but the mining sector were glad to see her submit her resignation. What happened? She was with Petro over in Europe, and she wanted her husband is from, he's I don't know if he's Danish, but he's or Norwegian, but he's Scandinavian, and she wanted for I think him, but she wanted her son to come and join her over in Europe. Colombia has very strict regulations when it comes to children traveling. They need to either be with both parents, or they need permission from both parents to travel either with one parent, or let's say they're a teenager, to travel alone. So let's say if you're 17 years old and you're with one parent, you can't travel outside the country, or in some cases within the country, without written permission of the other parent. It's kind of wild. My daughter, she's adult now, but when she was under 18, came to visit me down in Colombia. She was living with her mom in the States, and even though she was a teenager and underage, she could come in and out of Colombia by herself without permission of anybody. But if she were Colombian, then she would not be able to. So those laws are very strict. Anyway, Irene Vélez, I'm using the English pronunciation of her name, wanted her son to be able to come and join her over there in Europe. I guess, I don't know, it'd be of course it'd be a wonderful experience. And when Migración Colombia, the migration authorities would not let her son, and forgive me, I believe it's a son, so I'm not using the script here, I'm going by memory, but when her son did not have the proper documentation to leave, which means that she would need to have signed and notarized a document, but she's already over in Europe, so she can't do that. The son would need permission from both parents, signed and notarized. She makes a phone call to the ministry, to Migración Colombia, to migration. And this is a case of what they call down here, usted no sabe quién soy yo, which is, you don't know who I am. Look, I'm the minister of mines. Damn it, I am the government, and my son's going to fly over here. That pressure, the migration officer did let her son through. Now the migration officer is in hot water, but she's saying, no, this order came from above. It's not me. You guys are making me the fall guy. They made me do it. And that is considered an abuse of authority. It is illegal in Colombia. And that allowed her many enemies, especially in the industry, but also in other political persuasions, to finally get her head. An investigation is ongoing over that. She resigned. Last I heard, she was actually still in office, though. I did verify on the the Ministry of Energy and Mines website today, and it still showed her at the center of the organogram of the org chart. But she's supposed to be on her way out and is under investigation. So we will see what happens there. She is I believe her background, she was at a university before, I want to say in Cali, and she is a philosopher by education. I think she was like a professor of philosophy. So anyway, that's what's going on there with Petro's Minister of Mines and Energy. I brought that up, mentioning the Oil and Gas Congress put on by Vostock Capital. They always do an excellent job, their team, with different types of events, not only petroleum, but also lithium, hydrogen, renewable energies. They have a lot of different things going on. Desalinization, for example. The name is Vostock Capital, but they're actually based in the UK, and they do events all over the world. I spoke on a panel. I moderated a panel there for them this year, and so I want to thank them for having me. So that's where I was, and then actually the week before, I was, of all places, in Uzbekistan. Lovely country, one of those places you never hear about. I was over there to speak to the government. Colombia has had a lot of success in the IT sector and in the outsourcing sector, which includes things like customer experience and back office. And that country is trying to kind of start from zero and look at how they can have the success of places like Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica in IT, Jamaica in voice services, things like that. So that was a really interesting trip. So I say that as my excuse and apology for my absence, but came back just in time, and we will keep you updated. Thank you again for your forbearance and for tuning in, and let me know what you think in the comments. Is this Narco Petro situation with Nicolás Petro, is it unfair? Is it a witch hunt? Is it the people that are out to get Gustavo Petro? Is it the rascally Centro Democrático? Or is this like a Hunter Biden situation? Is this Nicolás Petro guy dirty? And did his dad know about it? So, are we looking at a hypocrisy where the Petro family is entangled with the Marlboro man and all these corrupt dollars? Or is it an unfair witch hunt and they're just out to get him because he's trying to reform the country and speak out for social justice? Which one is it? You guys, I'm just trying to report, so don't blame me. I'm neither the prosecution or the defense. I'm just a humble reporter. But do let me know which of the two is it, or is it something else? Let me know in the comments, please. I promise to read everyone, and if you can say something interesting and nice, I'll maybe even respond. Thank you, guys. And meanwhile, stay safe and stay kind, and tune in next week.